Hi, welcome to Pocket Roni. We're going to talk about Pythagorean Theorem. This should be a review, but if it is not something you can remember, this is a good reminder. Here we have a right triangle. In a right triangle, you're always going to have a right angle, which is what I'm pointing at. A right angle is always 90 degrees. On each side of the right angle, you have two sides, and you call these two sides the legs. And then the side across from the 90 degrees is always the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always across from the 90 degrees. And the hypotenuse is always the longest side of a right triangle. Anytime you have a right triangle, you can use the Pythagorean Theorem to solve for the sides of the triangle. The Pythagorean Theorem states that the legs squared plus legs squared is equal to the hypotenuse squared. You might also see it in other books as a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You will see it in this format on the SAT test. The a and the b both represent the legs. The c always represents the hypotenuse. Matthew C. likes to use leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared, and that is what I will use. So looking at problem 18b6, you have a right triangle. Again, Pythagorean Theorem can only be used for right triangles. Anytime you see a right triangle, the first equation you should think of is Pythagorean Theorem in order to solve for any of the sides of the triangle. In this particular triangle, we know the legs. One leg is 10, one leg is 7. We don't have any specific units, so you do not need to put units on your answers because we do not know if this is feet, yards, inches, centimeters, or meters. We are trying to find the length of the hypotenuse. So anytime you have a right triangle, you always use Pythagorean Theorem to solve for the sides. You start out with your formula. We know that one leg is 10 squared plus 7 squared equals the hypotenuse squared. 10 squared is 100, 7 squared is 49. Add those two together. You are not done here. We are trying to find h, the hypotenuse, not h squared. The opposite of squaring something is square root. So in order to solve for h, we take the square root of both sides. In the world of algebra, whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other side. So we find here that h, the square root of h squared is h, and then the square root of 149. Here you need to look for to see if you can simplify radicals. I don't believe that the square root of 149 will simplify, so you can just leave it as h equals the square root of 149. Alright, now we're on problem 18b, number 8. We are given that one leg is 24. We don't know this leg, and the hypotenuse is 25. Remember, the hypotenuse is always across from the 90 degrees. So, using Pythagorean Theorem, because we use Pythagorean Theorems for right triangles, we know that one leg is 24. We don't know the other leg, and the hypotenuse is 25. So 24 squared is 576 plus, I don't know that leg, and then 25 squared. Using algebra, you get numbers on one side and your variables on the other side. Okay, so we need to get our numbers together. So legs squared equals 49. I'm not done because I want the leg, not just legs squared. So in order to get the leg, I take the square root of both sides. The square root of L squared is just L, and the square root of 49 is 7. So we know that the length of that side of that leg is 7. Okay, now going down to 18b, number 11. Here you are given three sides of a triangle, and they want you to say whether it is a right triangle or not. So you have to use Pythagorean Theorem to prove if this is a right triangle or not. Well, if you know you're using Pythagorean Theorem, then you know you're using leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. And they are telling you to prove if it's a right triangle. That's how you know to use this formula. Well, how do you know which one of these is the hypotenuse? The hypotenuse is always the longest side, so therefore 26 is your hypotenuse. So therefore 10 and 24 are your legs. So you put in 10 and 24 in for your legs, and then put in 26 for your hypotenuse. If this is a right triangle, then your left side will equal the right side. If your left side does not equal the right side, then it is not a right triangle. 10 squared is 100. 24 squared is 576. And then 26 squared is 676. 100 plus 576 is 676. So yes, it is a right triangle. Again, if the left side does not equal the right side, then it is not a right triangle. But with these sides of 10, 24, and 26, the left side equals the right side, so it is a right triangle.